Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 10 of Outlaw Star. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Jean and Jim had a bit of a kerfuffle regarding money and their approach to essentially acquiring more money, Jean was taking a very laissez-faire approach where we'll get money when we get money, we can find a job, whereas Jim wants a bit more certainty, understandably so, considering they're burdened with this massive debt that is the Outlaw Star. However, everything was sort of swiftly made moot by Suzuka, who ended up capturing the big bounty that Jim and Jean had gone to hunt. And while everything seems all well and good, Jean caught notice of this big space race going on, and one of the racers is apparently the McDougal brothers. Now, lest we forget, Jean's got a bit of a bone to pick with them because they are, in all likelihood, involved with his father's death and sort of the inciting incident as to why he was none too keen on space travel. So, naturally, Jean wants to get involved for better or for worse. So one of the other components of the space race was that, they have to travel to it. And naturally, there are probably port fees and things like that as well. I mean, even Jim is bringing up this prospect right now. It's Hayfon, the place they're headed to, it's a big place, so aren't the port fees going to be pretty huge? The answer is yes, but presumably, even if Jean doesn't get the answers he wants from the McDougals, the idea is entering the space race will probably net him, a pretty penny. I'd imagine if it's this big intergalactic space race as it's being made out to be, the top prize has got to be pretty hefty. And, even assuming the Outlaw Star doesn't come in first place, I feel like the first 10 places, say, depending on how many there are racing, anything would be, paying a considerable sum, I'd imagine. I mean, I have no real evidence to base this on, I'm just sort of speculating, but, ooh. So in this fancy meeting that Jim and Jean are attending, they're informed that there is an entrance fee. That's, deeply unfortunate for Jean. And, ooh. Okay, so Jean's gonna cause problems, I reckon. He wants more information on the McDougals, but that's strictly prohibited by the race. You can't check out your competition. I mean, that's not even what Jean's doing, presumably. But, oh, the rad. He's just going for it. Oh, I take that back. I thought he was going for her phone number, and I was gonna say, Jean, you dog. because I would do it too, you know? I think it's the glasses that are doing it for me. But that aside... Oh, wait a minute. The entrance fee is $150,000. I want to say they only netted $10,000 at the end of the previous episode, so, yeah, it seems like the situation is rather grim, especially if they want to get in. Alright, so here is presumably the big conflict of the episode. You know, this lovely lady here informs Gene and Jim that if you can't afford the fee, you're gonna have to find a sponsor. So, that brings several issues. You know, they need to find someone with deep pockets who's willing to throw a considerable sum of cash behind them. And because they're first-time racers with no racing experience, it would really only take, like, an absolute lunatic who would be willing to do that. You know, someone with, like, no financial sense. Like, realistically, more of a gambler than anything. And, you know, the odds aren't very good, even if Gene is adamant about doing this. Because, you know, he's adamant about racing, he's adamant about things working out, and, you know, maybe he's right, but he's also sort of more interested in the McDougalls than anything else. You know, yeah, he offers Jim this line about, like, winning the race would be good advertising for us, and that very well may be the case, but, you know, I get the feeling that that's really a secondary motivation to the whole McDougal business. So Suzuka is kind of against the whole thing, I guess, you know, with that idiom, you know, neither a borrower nor a lender be. I mean, fair enough, you know, it's messy business lending and borrowing money. Things get tense, you know. Like, I think there's another saying, like, never lend to a friend money you expect to get back. You know, because if you get really caught up on it, you're swiftly going to either get your money and lose a friend, or vice versa. Or both, really. You might lose a friend and money. So Fred Lowe has shown up, and I feel like if anyone's gonna stick up the money for the entrance fee, it would likely be him, although, I mean, realistically, this is only gonna put Gene and Jim in the hole even further, you know? Like, they already owe him a considerable sum of money for arming the Outlaw Star, but, man. So Fred's making it pretty clear here. It's like, look, all expenses will be paid if you finish in the top 3. And that's, you know, not great. Like, we don't know how many people are competing, but it's safe to say top 3 is a pretty hefty thing. So Fred's making it pretty clear that, like, hey, if you guys, like, don't win any prize money, you will be indebted to me even further. Whoa, buddy. Alright, so Fred has a special outfit for Gene to wear when he wins, and he stands in the winner's circle. Wow, that was a cunning thing to just sort of, like, foist this onto Melfina. I mean, I can't say I blame him, but, like, man, this is bordering on just, like, a big humiliation ritual, honestly, wearing a suit like that in public. Ooh. You know, it's something when you have to inflect it as a joke to your friend. Hey, you're not going to sell us out to pirates, are you? You know, I feel like if you have to ask, it's kind of over already, you know? And, like, seeing as how Fred already kinda, maybe sorta sold him out to pirates before, like, it's not a good track record, you know? Alright, so I guess the butler, or the bodyguard, is sort of tacitly cheering for Gene, if only because he wants his boss to be repaid. Understandable, I suppose, but, I seem to recall that guy was, rather terse previously, especially in regards to Jean. I mean, I get it. If you're Fred Lowe's bodyguard, you have to be a certain type, but, I don't know if the terseness is necessarily warranted. So it seems like just like that, they're getting ready to start the race. They're moving to the starting line. I feel like it's a wee bit premature because Gilliam, the onboard computer, doesn't know about the race. He also doesn't know about Suzuka and what the deal is with her. I mean, I guess she's not on board, so they're probably planning something devious. But Jean was also asking for a detailed map of the Heifan system, which I feel like if you need a map at this point, it might well be over. Because, while a track for a race should be fairly set in stone, as it were, I mean, space is a bit different, things move around in space. And sure, there are big, astronomical distances between things. That doesn't mean there can't be a surprise meteorite where you don't expect one to show up. Alright. So, Melfina's up to something. She's asking Gilliam to access the largest Heifan database around. Oh, okay. Well, she's curious about herself and, what she is. She knows she's a bioandroid, but, as to her purpose, that's still a big mystery. I feel like you're not going to get many answers just by, checking a bog standard database. I feel like if you want to learn answers to those questions, you have to find, who actually made you and ask them. Granted, they're probably not going to have a big satisfactory answer in terms of what your purpose is, because you were probably made for, maybe not a menial task, but a task. And, I don't know, that's kind of beneath the dignity of a human being, We humans, our purpose is greater than just, doing a job, So, while Melfina might not be strictly human in a technical sense in some way, she's close enough that I feel like she deserves a better answer than, oh, you were made to, cook food or something. Oh, no, Jean. Don't do it. Don't hit on the waitress. Oh, dear. Little does he realize it's Eijitan, as presumably indentured here at this event. Lest we forget, last we saw Eijitan, she had been effectively imprisoned at a restaurant because Jean left her with a huge bill and she was stuck washing dishes. I don't remember if they were on Heifan before and they've merely returned or what the deal is, but to run into a company like this is no good. Especially because she's sort of giving into her animal impulses to start destroying things. If she was indebted before, things are only going to get worse, because she dropped a tray deliberately, and then she jumped on a table, knocking everything down. I feel like her boss would be having a conniption right now if he saw any of this. So, she's saying she's very grateful for this waitressing job, but, I don't know, that's not in evidence given her behavior. She's making a pretty big spectacle of yourself, and I feel like when you're a waitress, you want to treat your clients well, but you don't necessarily want to, cause a big scene. I feel like a waitress dropping a tray, that can be forgiven, given extenuating circumstances, but doing stuff like this, it's really kind of understandable that she's being tossed out. Man, you love to see it when the cat girl gets dragged out by the bodyguards. it is frankly what she deserves, and it probably should have happened a little bit sooner. So I guess, as expected, Melfina hasn't really found anything. And Gilliam suggested, checking out, pirate databases, which I feel like is a risky venture, because that seems to me kind of like hacking into their systems, which I feel pretty certain they're likely to take as an act of aggression, And what's more, why would pirates know anything about Melfina? Pirates don't strike me as the technically savvy types to be able to create something like Melfina. She seems more like the product of some evil megacorp biolab or something like that. Not like pirates who, raid and reave in the void of outer space. So it seems like things are really getting down to business. They've been given the route for the race, leaving Hayfon 4, heading towards Hayfon 3, and, oh dear. They have to orbit a nebula and pass through an asteroid belt, which seems to me, to be singularly dangerous. Yeah. Wow. 1.6 billion kilometers for the race. That's probably very small in terms of astronomical distances, but wow. I feel like that's a lot of mileage to put on a ship for something like this. So, despite all of this, Jean is still a wee bit more focused on the McDougal brothers, rather than finishing the race and winning and not landing in even more massive debt. So we're learning about some of the other racers as they approach the starting line. Oh, that's interesting. It seems like all the ships are launching at different times. I mean, it would kind of make sense that the Outlaw Star being the latest entrant would be going last, but really it just seems kind of like they're being kneecapped from the get-go. Now, interestingly, Aisha Clan has entered into the race. Somehow. Something tells me she's none too keen on actually racing and is more keen on revenge against Jean, but, this doesn't really bode well for the actual integrity of the race. I feel like things are going to devolve into petty grudge settling pretty quickly, which, it could make for a more entertaining race. Imagine if Formula 1 races had people ramming into one another. They don't, but, it might make for a neat spectacle, assuming people aren't seriously injured or maimed or killed. So interestingly enough, the McDougals are gonna leave pretty quickly, and only now are they just kinda ready. That's very interesting, that the brothers were seemingly not together. Although, I don't see the elder brother. We'd seen him before, but now we're only seeing the younger brother. Maybe it's something where the older brother just doesn't care about this sort of thing. It's hey, little brother, do whatever you want, but leave me out of it. So this is kind of interesting. There's a little bit of room for mistaken identity here. Jean doesn't know for sure that the El Dorado is in fact the McDougal ship. He assumes, but he doesn't know, and therefore outright aggression probably isn't the right approach. I'm certain Gene would go in on a hunch, but I feel like he has to have a hunch first. Ooh, Suzuka. For someone who, I guess doesn't care much for lending and borrowing, she certainly is alright with gambling. And, I mean, I can't say I blame her for betting in favor of the Outlaw Star, but, like, there's gotta be some seriously steep odds, right? Like, she bet 20,000, which is a hefty sum, but, I don't know. I feel like, she's about to be very wealthy in short order. Now, interestingly, that old guy, who's cropped up, I believe, once before, he recognizes the Outlaw Star by its model, and he's sort of curious as to what it's doing here. And frankly, anyone who's familiar with the ship should probably be wondering the same thing, considering that, you know, it has some purpose. You know, we've sort of been led to believe that, even if we don't know what the actual purpose is. I mean, it's safe to say it wasn't designed for racing, you know. Like, it was clearly designed for, you know, space combat to some degree, but there's probably something even further beyond that. Wow, so just listening to that, the fastest ships are just reaching the first checkpoint, but it's been 14 hours. So, this seems to me to be less of a race and more of, like, a marathon, I guess. Because, like, I feel like a lot of races, like Formula 1 and things like that, like, they're not insanely long things. Like, it might be an all-day affair, but just the one day, you know? 14 hours, like, that's a lot of time, you know? Especially when you're doing something. Granted, you know, most of the crew is probably just, like, sitting around in the cabin waiting for things to happen, but, ooh. So Gene's asking, like, what's the fastest way to get to the checkpoint? And Gilliam says, okay, well, this way is safer. It's like, buddy, do you know who you're talking to? Like, things are about to get real interesting. You know, rather than, like, avoiding the gravity wells of the planet, it seems as though Gene just kind of wants to skim them to hit the checkpoint. And that's kind of, inadvisable. You know, I certainly wouldn't do it. Gilliam is, none too pleased with this course of action, but, you know, he's not Hale. He can't exactly say, like, I'm sorry, Gene, I can't do that, but, man. You know, surely this will pay off big dividends, right? Like, assuming they survive the gravitational pull of the planets that orbit one another, then surely the Outlaw Star will be catapulted to first place, right? Oh dear. So unfortunately, things are, kinda not good. You know, it seems like it might be it, even during this race. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.